Hi, everyone. Charlotte Wenner from Astrology of the Invisible Luminaries. Today, I want to talk about a story which was really flooding the news last week, and I'm sure you've seen something about. And I'm not talking about the way newly elected young politicians are deciding to solve economic problems by taking away retirement funds, or even about the way how Hungary's Orban has vetoed the loan the EU wants to make to Ukraine of 90 billion euros. And Ursula von der Leyen is trying to get rid of individual countries' rights. No, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking, of course, about Andrew Mountbatten Windsor and the way he is being highlighted as the bad boy of the whole Epstein file. So let's take a look at the horoscopes going on now and see if we can find out if he is indeed such a bad boy or if he's sort of in the wrong place at the wrong time and has become a scapegoat. So, first of all, a few facts about this. You may know that Andrew was already arrested in 2022 about allegations pertaining to the Epstein files, but that sort of blew over. And it took a great deal of time, of course, for the actual files to be released, but that occurred in 2025, the second half of 2025. And on the last day of October, King Charles took the rather drastic step of stripping his brother from all royal titles and entitlements. Um, what we saw this past week is that on the 19th of February, which was incidentally his 66th birthday, former Prince Andrew was arrested in his home at just around 8 o'clock in the morning. And he has been charged with suspicion of conduct unbecoming while in office. So, the first place I wanted to take a look to find out why this happened to him, and especially on his birthday. I mean, I'm an astrologer. For him to be arrested on his birthday, this is, of course, a really big deal, perhaps more than other people who might just find it a bit irritating on his birthday. But for me, it's sort of a significant. So the first place I looked, of course, was his birth chart to see what can we find out about his general personality and character. And a few things stood out for me. First of all, it was very striking to me that Prince Andrew has got his sun exactly at the first 0 degrees of Pisces. And that's for the birth time of 3:30 in the afternoon, which is, for my taste, a little bit rounded off. And with this exactness of just into Pisces, it does raise some questions, but it is the birth time on the birth certificate and given by the palace. So we're going to take that. And what you see is that his sun is in the eighth house. So, of course, we know the eighth house, that's where things are submerged, where there can be mysteries, where there can be traumas. We know from all the publicity on about King Charles that Prince Philip, the father, was a rather cold and strict parent. And we see that in the sign of Pisces, which would indicate that he would be sensitive to this. The eighth house is, of course, a water house, so it would have a deep emotional impact. And what also is interesting is that it is out of sign conjunct to Chiron in Aquarius. And so that's an interesting sort of bit of information about his character, that his whole idea of himself, his being, his person, his identity is somehow connected to some kind of wound, and that might have been connected to some trauma or difficult submerged emotional experience with his father. It's opposite Pluto. So this would, in the second house, so this would reinforce that power and authority and also powerlessness would be themes that would be involved in this Sun Chiron um, conjunction. The second house has to do with your own rhythm, your own physical needs, whereas the eighth house has to do with how these needs are accommodated with others. And there could have been some kind of struggle in him feeling that he could be the way he wanted to be as a child, or being disciplined, or having a sort of authority over him. Um, Another interesting bit of information has to do with his ascendant, which forms a midpoint between the square of the North Node here in the third house and the Beast, which is one of the turnings, 90 degrees from the North Node. And the Beast is also conjunct the average mean black moon. So that has to do with rejection. The Beast is an indication that there was no channeling, no focus, no structure to these feelings of rejection, which could have taken place within a larger group settings, and also in the communications there, that he feels difficult to communicate himself, even though this is himself, even though that would be where he would be wanting to manifest something new, to articulate himself, to communicate, to discuss and communicate with people in a new way. But that Beast and Black Moon here, that's also a sort of indication that there is an obstruction, that there is a block to his actually manifesting or creating what he actually wants to do. The midpoint on his ascendant highlights that this has to do with his personal personality, the way he presents himself to others, and his inability to present himself and communicate that personality in the way that he might wish to, might be highlighted here with the ascendant on Leo. Leo is, of course, the sign of royalty. So that may have to do with his personality as second son. He was the third child of Elizabeth and Philip, and the second son. That would somehow feel burdensome in communicating himself authentically. Remember, the Black Moon has to do with your inner authenticity. And there may have been, with the Beast there, a very strong, uncontrollable urge to be able to do that. But that would, of course, conflicted with the personality and the way that people in the environment would wish him to do that. And he would have had to channel that in a more socially acceptable, controlled way, which you see on the polarity point to the Black Moon here in the fifth. And Jupiter here might also show that he would want to expand in this area. And the fifth house is, of course, the house of romance. So he's had a reputation as a kind of a playboy for much of his career. So these new allegations do not really come out of nowhere. This midpoint of the square between the Black Moon, Beast, and North Node is, I think, very important, because every time this ascendant gets triggered, the entire lunar cross gets triggered. So it automatically triggers the North Node by a sesquiquadrate, with the south node, a half square with the beast, a sesquiquadrate with the dragon. So this ascendant point is very sensitive. So these were some of the points that I saw as extremely interesting in this whole bad boy sort of image. The last thing I saw, of course, was the Venus-Mars conjunction here at the end of Capricorn. And it makes Mars makes an exact 30-degree angle with Chiron. So that's interesting because Mars is the ruler of his MC, his point of worldly standing and career. And with Mars in such a tight aspect, even though 30 degrees is a very minor aspect, but in such a tight aspect with Chiron, this also gave me an indication, well, there may have been some bad boy there, but there was also a very strong emphasis here on being wounded, and the emphasis. You also see, of course, Uranus in the first house, which shows a certain tendency to want to kick against the traces of acting out in a way that is unexpected. And although it's a rather wide square, it is square his moon here in Scorpio in the fourth house. So there might have been a certain amount of rebellion against, especially his mother Elizabeth, but also the general atmosphere there in the palace. Another interesting thing to look at, of course, are the declinations. And what struck me here is that there's opposition between planets in the southern declinations between 20 and 22 degrees, and Pluto in the northern declination of 21 degrees. And what you see is that there is an opposition here between Venus and Mars, which I just mentioned, but also Saturn and Jupiter. So all four of these planets, you've got two pairs of planets that are antithetical to each other. You've got Venus and Mars, which are the antithesis, of attraction and overcoming or winning. And you've got Jupiter and Saturn. Jupiter is, of course, expansion, and Saturn is putting it in a tight organization and a framework. So you see that this declination would show that there is a certain amount of power connected to the struggles between these influences. And that makes it also interesting in the way his life is playing out at this period. So what was actually happening when Andrew first got stripped of his titles? I thought that would be a good way to start looking at it. And one aspect, which is not yet exact, but will be becoming exact in the next year or so, is the secondary black moon mean or average with the black moon Lilith true. And they're almost exactly conjunct with each other, and they're also situated on his primary direction MC. So that's a very elevated position for this principle on the one hand, which represents the inner integrity and inner knowing and lack of artifice, but more authenticity of knowing the essence of wanting to manifest the essence of an office, for instance, with House 10, rather than to just put up a false face. So there is in some way this inborn instinct, which we saw in his natal chart, of wanting to express himself authentically, and how that may have been blocked, especially in his personal expression, that seems to be coming to a head here in the way he presents himself and presents himself in his worldly, in his position in the world. Another interesting thing is that on the day that he was arrested, that Mars was almost exactly conjunct his Mercury in the eighth house. So, excuse me, in the eighth house. So, this shows that this Mars, this action, this aggression was taking place with regard to some kind of activity, some kind of knowledge or files, Epstein files, information about him in the area of sexuality in the eighth house. Um, Also, the moon at that moment was at a square to his Venus Mars conjunction here in the sixth house. So that shows the timing aspect was exact there. And you also see that the sun was in a trine to his natal Pluto. So the sun is really shining the light in the world. It's happening now in his natal 10th house. The world is becoming illuminated about these Plutonian acts, which are said to have taken place. Then we see the arrest, which happened on the 19th. We'll look at that, what was going on there shortly. But I was curious at looking at his solar from the last year, because in the last month or two of your year, your age, solar age, there is a special sort of urgency to actually manifest everything from your solar chart that has not yet been manifested. For those of you who know the way I work with solar charts, you will see that I am really only paying attention to the planets which fall on the angles. And by angles, I mean, of course, the ascendant descendant axis and the MCIC axis, but also the east point and west point. Those are 90 degrees from the MC and IC, and also the zenith and the nadir. The zenith is the uppermost point, 90 degrees of the ascendant, and the nadir is the lowest point, 90 degrees from the ascendant. So I've circled those, and first I take a look at the solar itself. And what you see here on the 10th house is that Pluto is very prominent. So the past year in which Andrew was arrested and the day before his birthday, or the day of his birthday, he got arrested. That would start the new solar. But the year before that, when he got arrested, you see that Pluto is prominently placed here in his position in the world, his career, his worldly standing. You also see at the zenith, so that's like a second MC, you see that the sun is up here. So that again is really pointing out the illumination that is being activated in this year, having to do with his professional standing. What's also interesting, this object here, that's Persephone, and in structural astrology, that represents the principle of circulation, of rapid circulation, of changefulness, also that which is fashionable, the passing fancy and interests and fashion of the world. And that's with Mercury. So that's, for me, that's showing that it's also his position in the world is really getting splashed all over the tabloids, to put it one way. You know, you're seeing it in social media, you're seeing it all over the newspapers, and that seems to be one of the activities of Persephone, so close with Mercury here, with the sun at the top of the chart. Also, you see that Uranus in the solar chart is very close to the ascendant. So that shows that there's going to be things which disrupt Andrew, which are completely unexpected and could have radical results in the way he's able to present himself, the way he is able to be himself in relation to other people. And at the IC, you say that Mars is here from the third house. And for me, you know, that looks a little bit like a brother because, of course, you've got the black sun here, and the black sun I see is very often in, say, the 10th house of monarchs, for instance, and male monarchs. And you see also that it's often in the charts of their mates, their partners, such as Princess Diana from the UK, and Maxima, the Queen of the Netherlands, also has the black sun in the 7th. So, when I'm looking at this Mars here in the 3rd, close to the 4th, we're talking about disruption in the home life, aggression, activity, assertive actions. In the 3rd house, that is, of course, the house of brothers and sisters, with the sun there, that would seem to indicate, his brother, Prince Charles, stripping him of his titles. Now, when you place the natal horoscope around the solar horoscope, you see how the individual reacts to these energies in that solar year. And you see, of course, the sun is always conjunct the sun. It's a solar. But it also shows that his vulnerability, his wound, is being highlighted by all this press as well. You see that the disruptive actions presented in the solar chart, he's going to be feeling that very strongly, and it could be interfering with his daily activities in house 6, his physical and his emotional health. With the moon there, with it so close to the ascendant, it could also have an impact on his relations. And finally, we see here that Pluto from the 3rd house in the solar chart is square his Andrew's personal ascendant here. So that's going to feel like a really strong blow here. So this is going to seriously impact his life. Then we go on to the next bit, and that is the transit of Andrew's chart when he was arrested. And you see here what's really interesting is that the transit Chiron is almost exactly conjunct his MC. So that again highlights this wounding experience, also the potential of healing. We saw in his chart that being able to express himself authentically, or having been made powerless through authority, was an issue. Whether or not this experience is going to represent any kind of opportunity to heal in that way is impossible to say, but it's interesting that Chiron again is playing such an important role here. Also, you see that the true black moon Lilith of the transit chart is almost exactly his natal moon. So again, this feelings of being rejected also within his family experience is going to be felt very strongly by Andrew. Another interesting pair is the North Node and Venus, which are 2 degrees separate in the transit chart, and their midpoint makes an exact half square to Andrew's MC and a sesquiquadrate to his IC. So although I made the chart for 8 o'clock, slightly after 8 o'clock, which was reported by the BBC, could be that it was a little bit before, a little bit active, a little bit after. But in any case, this Venus and North Node sesqui square the 4th house, so he was arrested in his home, and the damage to his worldly and professional reputation is highlighted here. With Venus it's an interesting, Venus is, of course, the ruler of the fourth house here, and the ruler of the second house in the transit horoscope. So it could mean serious repercussions. He's losing his home. He's having to give up his home, for instance, second house and fourth house issues. Also interesting is to see, okay, what was the difference when he was released? So he was released about 12 hours later, so 8 o'clock in the evening. And then I'm really sort of interested, I'm paying attention, especially to the changes when I look at these comparisons between transits and natal horoscopes. I really concentrate on the fast moving aspects because it's important, in my opinion, to be able to show why this specific incident happened to this specific person at that time. And when you're looking at longer transits, of course, it could be happening to everybody. So I'm really focusing here at some of the cusps of the houses, how they have changed in these 12 hours. You see again, of course, that by now, by now, the true black moon Lilith is even closer, only 8 minutes of arc removed from an exact conjunction to his natal moon. You also, what I find very interesting is that his Jupiter, his natal Jupiter, is almost exactly opposite the 10th house. So this sort of, and is then conjunct the transit fourth house. So this would give a kind of indication of freedom of the authorities freeing him to go home. You also see that the 8th house, the cusp of the 8th house, has now become almost exactly conjunct his natal 10th house. So again, this is the theme of secrets and hidden issues related possibly to sexuality having come to light with, of course, Chiron there now. So this is really a damaging sort of influence to his career, his professional role, and having to do with the 8th house issues. And of course, it's most interesting to look at how the moon has moved, because when he was arrested, of course, it was at about 27 degrees. Let me take a look at that. Just moon was at 23 degrees of Pisces, and when he was released, it had now reached 0 degrees Aries, along with the famous conjunction between Saturn and Neptune. Very interesting stuff going on his birthday. So speaking of his birthday, his actual solar horoscope is from the 18th. So astrologically, of course, he already celebrated his birthday the day before. So that's one small consolation, perhaps. You see that his coming year is going to be marked again by our friend Pluto in the solar horoscope, house 6. So this is a complete transformation of work issues. It could lead to health and physical and emotional issues, and that's square the solar MC. You also see the solar ascendant is being squared by the solar true black moon Lilith. So again, his personal expression, his personality, the way he is able to interact with people, that is being severely curtailed by rejections and insistence on authenticity or being trustworthy or being truthful in this issue. It could also represent the rejection taking place from familial situations. And you see, of course, the solar sun is conjunct the solar Mars. So that means the coming years he's going to be facing a lot of aggressive actions from others, that there is going to be a lot of blame, a lot of censure coming through others for him personally. How is he going to react to that? We look at the natal chart around the solar chart, and we see, first of all, he's going to act with his first house Uranus. So the angles are also very similar in the solar and the natal chart, and this points to a year in which a great reset can take place. So it's interesting to see that his inborn rebelliousness, which we see rather removed from the ascendant in his own chart, is falling almost exactly on the solar ascendant. So this is going to show that he's either going to be the recipient, of a lot of aggression, but he might give back what he gets. And I'm reminded by this of Prince Harry and all of the controversy that he stirred up when he revealed all the royal secrets in his book Spare. So, taking a look at this chart, I also see that his natal Vulcan is squaring the almost exactly squaring the solar ascendant. Now, Vulcan in structural astrology is a trans-Plutonian planet, so it's not that Vulcan that is supposed to be next to the sun. It's a trans-Plutonian planet, the last planet that has not yet been discovered, and it is the counterpart of Mercury. It has to do with universal communication. And with it here highlighted in the 10th house, it shows a kind of fame which he cannot escape, and he may not want to. And because it's a counterpart to Mercury, I'm thinking, we might also be getting another replay of the revealing all kinds of secrets that we saw with Prince Harry and his book Spare. We see his natal Neptune is also squaring the ascendant, as is his moon. So this highlights a kind of victimization, feelings of victimization, and at the same time emotional hurt, but also perhaps in Scorpio a little bit of that revenge theme that we always hear about. Finally, we see, and this is highlighted by Mars and Venus squaring the solar MC. So it's on the west point. So that shows that he might be reacting with aggression or taking action with regards to loved ones or with regards to money. It could be, but my overall feeling here is that he might not go away quietly. And finally, yes, as I said, his natal Chiron, which we saw in his solar from last year, was at the MC. We're seeing that it's highlighted here with the sun in the 7th house. So there's a very good chance that he's going to feel like he's being very ill-used by everybody. So, well, I hope you enjoyed this quick rundown. My basic opinion is that Andrew Mountbatten Windsor was most likely involved in the parties on Epstein Island, but I'm not so sure that he was as such a villain as he is being made out to be. I think personally that this story is being used to draw our attention away from other issues which that are not highlighted, but that we should be concerned about, and which are much more important. But that's my opinion as the politically incorrect astrologer here. Thank you for your attention. If you're interested in structural noetic astrology, I have revised the first edition of my book. You can get that on Amazon. And if you need more information about any of my workshops, consultation, you can find them at these sites. I'm on Facebook, Astrology of the Invisible Luminaries, on Instagram, Astrology Invisible, and I have my own YouTube channel, which I hope you're watching right now. And don't forget to subscribe. Okay, thank you for your time and attention, and hope to see you again online or in a consultation soon.